Put on this computer. All right, so I am just starting to record Monday, April 10th's lesson. You need to access, and I guess this might be the only way, this article on the signing of the Declaration of Independence. If you're watching this video, you'll notice that I'm scrolling too fast for you to read it. You'll have to freeze the screen and read it so that you can respond. Yeah, you have to pause it. So you're going to read this article, all of it. It's all about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And we're thinking about who signed it, who didn't sign it, what was going on at the time. Remember that the 13 original colonies were not joined together in any way. And at first, a lot of them wanted to stay with England. England was really powerful and they were afraid of the British and they were afraid of angering them and they were afraid of what that meant. But they sent their grievances or a list of things going wrong to the British in England, to King George, who you're going to hear about tomorrow during the read aloud. And he did not respond. He was unwilling to do anything for the colonists. They had no representation. They had no voice, but they were being taxed like crazy. So they finally kind of had no choice but to revolt against the British and voted to form their own country, which they were really scared. If you read this article, you're going to find out that they sat in the room really quietly and they signed it. And they really felt like they were kind of signing their death warrants because they were sure the British were going to come back angry and come after them. So please read through this article in detail. We've just done this in breakout rooms. Read it. And then after you read it, let me go back to the, here we go. Click on the second link, which maybe this is the link that takes you. Oh, here we go. And discuss those questions. If you're not at the meeting, you get to fill out some answers. Rebellions, plots, and petitions for freedom by enslaved people in early America. Does this not have the link to the articles? Oh, here we go. So there are a bunch of articles down here. And this one I'm sure I can share with you guys. And I don't want you to have to read them all because it's way too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the two breakout rooms. And I'm going to have the first breakout room read the first two stories. So the servants plot and New York City slave uprising. So room one will read those two. Okay. And you're going to come back and just kind of tell us what they were about. Room two will read these two, the Little George Ship Revolt. So you're reading room two is going to read the Little George. Write it down if you're in room two so you remember. And the Stono Rebellion in room two. The Stono Rebellion. And you're going to come back and tell us what those were about. And our room, the main room, will read Philip Whipple's petition. So Prince Whipple, sorry. I don't know why I said Philip. And we'll read the German Coast Uprising and the Underground Railroad because we like to read a lot. We'll read the last three, okay? I'm going to give you, since we're reading three, when we're done, I'm going to close the breakout rooms and have you come back and kind of tell us about some of these other uprisings. So what we're looking at now is how people who didn't end up famous and recorded in history, how enslaved people, and at that time they had these things called indentured servants, where people who wanted to go to America would basically sell themselves. So they'd say, I will work for you for like 6 years if you'll pay my passage. So if you'll pay for me to go on the ship to America, I'll be your slave for 6 years. It was called indentured servitude. It was different because you had a route to freedom. You weren't forced into it. You went into it by choice, or your family sold you. If you were a kid, sometimes the parents would sell the kids. So if you were being really naughty and they wanted to get rid of you, no, that's not why. They did it because they were desperate and needed the money. They would sell their kids to be slaves to people. How did the colonial, federal, and state governments respond when the enslaved people tried to get freedom? And what was the impact of the fights for independence? Okay, so I'm going to share this link with you guys now. Let's see if I can get a sharing link. And this one should open because I think it's just a Google Doc. All right, anyone with the link can view, copy the link. All right, so room one, you're going to read, everybody get the link right now. Room one, you're reading the first two. Room two, you're reading the second two, and we'll read the last three. When we're done, we're going to close the breakout rooms and you guys are going to come back and join us. Okay? Head back to your breakout rooms, take the link with you, and the same person who started reading last time, you start reading this article. Okay? Go.
Is it the link that's in the chat?
And actually, boys, I know it's your reading group time, but we're going to do this in.
Breakout rooms aren't open.
Uh-oh, Mila, I can't hear you. Try again.
Breakout rooms are not open.
They're not? Oh, because I closed them. Oh, thank you. Oops. Try again. Okay, Christian, let's see which room you need to go to. I'll wait until I see people go, and then I'll move you to a room that's not too crowded, okay?
Isn't it book club right now?
It is book club, but we're doing this reading instead. So this is still reading, but it's a different reading. Okay, looks like Amadi, are you going to go to room 1? Okay. I'm going to send, Christian, I'm going to send you to room 1 too. Okay. Bree. Oh, I kind of want to move Bree. Okay, here we go. Amoy, are you going to head to room 2 and help read, please? Amoy, are you there? She's not going right now. Okay, the rest of us, let's look at the last 3 articles. All right. Stop. Where'd our articles go? There they are. Okay, wait. So 1, servant's plot, the New York City slave uprising. 1, 2. Okay, so these are ours. New York slave conspiracy. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. All right. Do either of you want to read? Vivi or Halime, you want to read for me? I can't see whether you're saying yes or no because I can't see the screen right now. Halime, how about you? Will you read one of these? Vivi says no. I see that. What do you think, Halime? Can you read this one for us? New York slave conspiracy? I'm guessing that's a no. Okay, I'll read it. Between March and April of 1741, 10 fires broke out across New York City. The government accused Black people of starting the fires and planning to burn the entire city. White people in the city panicked. The government charged more than 100 enslaved people with crimes related to fires. Boy, that sounds like today, doesn't it? Beat and harassed them and executed 13 of them by burning them at the stake. Oh, the good old days. 70 others were sent to the Caribbean to be enslaved, where work on the sugar plantations was incredibly difficult. Horrible. The government also expelled or executed the white people they suspected of helping the enslaved people. After the trials, New York passed even stricter laws targeting enslaved people, like expanding the night watch police force, restricting where Black people could get their water, and requiring that all new enslaved people be brought to New York be from Africa and not the Caribbean, as they believed enslaved people from the Caribbean were more likely to revolt. Actually, there were quite a few revolts of the enslaved people in the Caribbean, so that's interesting. So here they are arresting and charging enslaved people. Prince Whipple's petition. In 1760, enslavers took... Yeah.
So which one, what's the name of the one we're supposed to be doing?
Are you in room 1? Are you in the first?
Yes.
You're reading the first 2 articles. The first 2 you come to.
Okay, so it should be showing like
It's this.
work.
Look at the bottom. If you go to the bottom, you just scroll down, the servant's plot. And then the one after that is New York City slave uprising.
And then we read that one too?
Yeah, you read those 2. Okay.
Okay.
All
right.
All right. In 1760, enslavers took 10-year-old Prince Whipple from Africa and brought him to New Hampshire, where he was enslaved by General William Whipple. General Whipple signed the Declaration of Independence and served as an aide to General George Washington, who was also a big slaveholder. Prince fought alongside his enslaver at the battles of Saratoga. Yep. Mila, yes?
I'm sorry, but me and we can't read it because Evie can't share their screen, and whenever I share my screen, it doesn't let me unmute.
Oh, really? Well, you guys can come back in here and listen if you want.
Okay.
Prince fought alongside his enslaver at the battles of Saratoga and in Delaware during the Revolutionary War. In 1779, 20 African men created a petition in New Hampshire. A petition is a request supported and signed by multiple people, like the Declaration of Independence. These men claimed they were taken from their native lands against their will as children. So think of the irony of the American Revolution. The Americans are complaining because they're being held kind of like slaves to the British, and they're complaining that they need their liberty and their freedom. But at the same time that they're fighting for liberty and freedom, are they considering that they're going to give that same liberty and freedom to Africans and to women? No, just to the white men in America need their freedom. So let's see here. Prince Whipple was one of the petitioners. He and the other men asked New Hampshire for their own freedom and for the abolition of slavery in the state. However, the government ignored their petition. Prince married an enslaved woman, Dinah, on the day she gained her freedom, but he was still enslaved. 1 year before he passed away, General Whipple freed Prince, who then moved his wife and their children into a house on the Whipple property. He died in 1796 and is buried in New Hampshire in a grave marking him as a Revolutionary War veteran. So even though this man was enslaved, he still fought for the freedom of the United States. Wow. German Coast Uprising. The goal of the revolt was to capture New Orleans and create an independent republic led by Black people in Louisiana. Over 500 enslaved Africans from 50 different nations with 50 different languages fought against U.S. troops and the territorial militias. It started about 30 miles upriver from New Orleans. The leader of these men and women was a man named Charles, who was an enslaved worker on the plantation of a white family that had fled the Haitian Revolution. So that was one of the islands in the Caribbean. Inspired by the successful uprising of enslaved people that led to Haiti's freedom, the rebels planned to march from plantation to plantation to create a slave army, while enslaved people in the city rose up at the same time. The two-prong attack would then merge as one and proceed to capture the strategic targets in the city. The leaders would be on horseback with the other men and women marching in columns of 4 behind them. At first, they were successful. With knives, hoes, clubs, and a few guns, the rebels marched toward New Orleans. The enslavers and the United States troops put down the revolt, arrested the group, and executed them, killed them, after a trial found them guilty. Their heads were cut off and placed on poles along 60 miles of the river in order to frighten any enslaved people who might have considered joining them. Their descendants and their supporters, however, sent more soldiers to the Union Army than any other state to end slavery in the United States during the Civil War. Wow. Amazing. I did not know that. What year was that? 1811. So this is right after we got freedom in the United States. They treated people like that. Horrible. The Underground Railroad. We're going to read more about the Underground Railroad later on, and I'm sure you guys have heard of it before, but it was a way that slaves could help each other to escape. They set up a sort of a way to sneak out. It wasn't safe, but it was better than having no help at all. So let's go back because I kind of want to read, since we have more people with us, I kind of want to read the ones that you guys didn't get to read. So you were the second two, right? So here we go. Little George Ship Revolt. Mila or Evie, do you guys want to read it now that you can see it?
I don't know.
You want me to read it or you want to do it?
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay, Little George Ship Revolt, 1730. So this is actually earlier. The Little George Ship Revolt took place on the British ship Little George in June 1730. It was one of the most successful uprisings in the ocean of captured Africans. The ship was carrying 96 captured people from West Africa to sell in Rhode Island. 5 days into the voyage, the revolt began. Several of the Africans were able to slip out of their iron chains. The crew fought back, but the Africans were able to overpower them and sail the ship back to the continent of Africa. Once they reached the Sierra Leone River, which is the country that I lived in West Africa, they abandoned the ship. The captain and crew of the ship were rescued by another slave ship and described the revolt in detail. So right here is Sierra Leone in West Africa. Very cool. I did not even know that story. Stono Rebellion, 1739. This is also early. In 1738, South Carolina passed a law requiring all white men to carry a gun to church on Sunday. This was to prevent the enslaved people from stealing the enslavers' guns while they were at church. However, it also meant that the armed white people were not at home, making it a good time to escape. In 1739, an Angolan man, which I didn't actually know that they enslaved Angolans because Angola was lower, led a band of 20 enslaved people to steal guns near the Stono River and head south toward Florida, where they would be free. On the way, they killed enslavers and encouraged enslaved people to join them. At the Edisto River, white colonists attacked the group and killed most of them. They sold the survivors into slavery in the West Indies. After the Stono Rebellion, the South Carolina government tried to improve conditions for enslaved people, but also cracked down on them. They discouraged enslavers from physically abusing enslaved people, made it more difficult to import enslaved people, and created a school to teach Christianity to enslaved people. But they also passed laws that banned enslaved people from growing their own food, meeting in groups, earning their own money, and learning to read. Why do you think they,
Laws.
yeah.
I need to get back into a breakout room.
Well, I'm actually going to close the breakout rooms right now so that we can talk just for a minute because we're kind of done now. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to have you guys, I'm going to close the breakout rooms. They'll come back and then they can tell us what they read about. So why do you guys think that they had laws against slaves reading or meeting in groups? Any ideas?
To stop revolutions or
Yeah, so to take away the power that they could have formed if they got together, right? There were, at a certain point in American history, there were way more slaves than there were free people. And so if the slaves would have been able to rise up, they had the manpower to do it. But because they kept them in like horrible conditions, they just couldn't do it. They tried though, right? It's interesting to read the history of how they tried. It's also interesting to think about these people trying to form this fabulous country, talking about freedom every day while their wives couldn't own property or vote, and they had all these enslaved people. What were they thinking? I have a hard time understanding that. Are you guys back yet? I see people popping back. I've got Bree. Is Bree back? Yep. Christian's back. Amade. Okay, I think we have everybody. So people who are in the first room, what did you read about? Can somebody tell me what you read about? Madi, Javen, what did you guys read? Christian?
Christian said that he was going to read and then he left.
Okay, did you read? Javen?
I was reading the New York slave uprising.
And what was that about?
I think it was about some slaves who decide who were they were 23 enslaved New Yorkers, and they gathered weapons and started the fire.
Oh, we read about that too. We read about what happened afterwards. They caught them all and they killed them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we think about this, all these great and patriotic acts by these people to break away from the British and form this country where people could be free, we have to also remember that they weren't talking about everybody, right? They weren't fighting for everybody's freedom, were they?
So they were just talking about white guys.
White guys. They wanted those white guys to be free.
White guys.
Well, it was a different time, but so you have to be careful because in history we go on and on about these heroic people, not really thinking about the fact that George Washington had a bunch of slaves at home while he's talking about the importance of man to have freedom. So anyway, that's pretty much what today was about, just kind of thinking about who founded this country, how they founded it. And then we haven't even talked about what the wealth of this nation was built on, because it was built on the backs of slaves. That's why there were more slaves than owners in the country, because they needed more people to do the farming. So as you look at history, you have to ask yourself, who wrote that history? What is the story? What are the other stories out there? And what do I really think about it? It was, it was still a brave thing to speak up for freedom, but it's a shame they defined it so narrowly, huh? All right, that's it, guys. You can go today and you can fill out 1003 and say that you were here for the lesson.